Hi everyone, you're very welcome to our first live presentation. I'd like to invite the students to turn on their camera. There's just a bit of an echo. Perfect. I think we have everyone. Just one second. Just waiting on one more student. Welcome everyone to the Placement and Internship Virtual Fair. We're very excited to kickstart this event with our very own student panel, who I'll shortly be introducing you to, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more from. So really looking forward to that. We're just waiting on one more person to pop in, and hopefully they can join us, and then we'll kickstart in 2 minutes. Okay, we're short on time today, so we might just kick off and then hopefully Niall can join us. So like I said, everyone, you're extremely welcome to the Maynooth University Placement and Internship Virtual Fair 2021. We're sorry that we can't join you in person, but what we did instead is we brought our students to you, and I'm really excited to welcome them to the student panel today. So for the next 30 minutes, you'll be hearing from these fine people in front of me here today. And learning about their experience at Maynooth University and what they've done really to get themselves future ready. So without further ado, I'd love everyone to introduce themselves. And Ryan, it'd be fantastic if I could start with you.
Absolutely. How's it going? So hi everyone. My name is Ryan. I am a final year now in computer science and software engineering.
Great. Thanks so much, Ryan. And Ellen?
So hi everyone, my name is Ellen Tracy. I am currently studying biotechnology at Maynooth University and I am in my final year too.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ellen. And last but not least, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm in my final year business and accounting here at Maynooth.
Great. So 3 final year students, and we really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us here today. And what I would like to say to anyone listening that's joining the fair, please pop your questions for these students into the questions tab at the live presentations piece on the Graduate Line platform, and we'll get to them. This is your chance to ask them those burning questions. So Ryan, maybe if I could start with you as part of this alumni panel, could you maybe tell me a little bit about your experience at Maynooth University and what it is that you got involved in to get future ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try not to go on too long. I have a tendency to ramble with that kind of question. Obviously I'm in my final year of computer science now, but since starting college, I've gotten involved with basically everything I could. I got involved with a lot of clubs and societies at the very start of college, just thinking that was a fun thing to do. And then kind of after that, I started doing, in my second year, I've heard about Muse and I was going towards that award, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more in a few minutes. But I was going towards that and I realized actually all of this stuff that I've been doing, this is actually really, really good for me, for the future, for applying for jobs, because it makes you reflect on the things you've done. And so I discovered actually, hang on, I need to keep track of this stuff. This is really useful skills I'm building up on. And so I kind of, once I started thinking about that, obviously I kind of pushed the stuff I was getting involved with a little bit more in the direction of, oh, these are skills I should really work on in terms of like communication, planning, organizing stuff. So I got really involved with different things going that route of thinking, okay, hang on, this is both very fun and it's going to be super useful. So I got involved very heavily with clubs and societies and with the Access Office in Maynooth that way. And there was just a lot of opportunities that kept popping up, which there always is in Maynooth, which is fantastic. So to get future ready, my plan was just always, okay, hang on, here's a load of stuff to get involved with. Let's do that. And then think about it later. It's like, oh, okay, this is what I learned from doing that. And so I kind of made myself a little log as I was getting involved. Like, well, this is all the stuff that I did. Just because I realized when I was doing the Muse Award in the second year, I was already forgetting some of the stuff I did in first year because there's so much piling on. Like over a whole year, you get involved with so many different things as you go. So I just thought, oh crap, I better start putting these in a list so that I can actually talk about these later on, which I found really useful when I was interviewing for stuff. And then after that, I did an internship with Oracle. So I took a year out of college to do that. and then a short burst with SAP before coming back to third year. So with Oracle, I was a digital advocate, and then with SAP, I was an augmented analytics product management intern. And then I came back to college. I did my third year where I did my actual official college placement, and I worked with Amazon there as a software development engineering intern, excuse me. And that brings me to where I am now.
Great. So lots of different experiences that you've touched on there that might be of interest to some students listening in today. You mentioned kind of that placement, that work experience, Muse Award as well, and that clubs and socks involvement, which is really interesting. So thanks for that, Ryan, for that intro. If I wouldn't mind going to Ellen next. So I know that Ryan touched on some experiences that he's got involved in, but I know that you recently completed the summer program for undergraduate research. And could you maybe tell me a little bit more about what you did as part of that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I just completed the SPUR program in the summer just gone, 2021. So it involves a 6 weeks research program where me particularly was based in a lab on campus. So you got to work with specialists in your field. So I got to work with 2 mentors, Dr. Paul Downing and Dr. Marion Butler. And they basically assess you on and assist you on your project where you basically carry out your own research. And it's just an amazing opportunity. It enabled me to put the theory that I had learned as part of my degree to work and understand that theory as well, because I was able to physically observe how certain apparatus work and what they involved while also carrying out protocols myself. So it involves the 6 weeks research project, but then you also have to form a poster and do a presentation on your research and your findings as well.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Ellen. And that SPUR symposium is happening next week, where we'll be showcasing all the students' work, which is great. And I know we're also joined by Sarah on the call as well, who also participated in a placement. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind telling me about your kind of placement opportunity, but really about why you decided to pursue a placement.
Perfect. So firstly, I did my placement with KPMG. So they're an accounting company for anyone that doesn't know. So the reason I wanted to do placement was to gain an insight into what actually the accounting industry is like. So in second year, I did like an auditing module. So we learned about how a company is audited. So I wanted to gain experience of that in real life. So I decided a placement was the best way to do that. I'm really glad I did placement because I gained so many different skills. I improved my communication skills, my Excel skills. Before I started placement, I only had like a basic knowledge of Excel, and then we were using Excel every single day. So now I know how to do all the formulas and sums. So it was a great way to learn about that. But it was also really good to build my network. So I was able to build my professional network. So I got to work with different people across the firm. So I was working with like associates, managers, directors, and it was great because I know if I have any future career questions, I can go back and ask them. I also wanted to hopefully get a graduate program out of my placement, which I did. So I will be going back to KPMG to do a 3-year grad program, and I'll also be doing a master's before I go back. So I think a placement was really important for me to kind of give me confidence and find out about the career I was interested in. But it's also a great social way to make new friends and meet new people. So I would highly recommend getting involved in a placement if you have the opportunity.
That's brilliant, Sarah. It sounds like you got some fantastic experience with KPMG that hopefully you can bring forward into your studies into final year. And we'll touch on that placement and kind of the benefits for your studies later on in the panel. But I'm conscious we're also joined here by Niall. So Niall, before I jump in with the question, I'll leave you introduce yourself just with your name, your degree, and what you participated in a minute.
How are you getting on? Sorry, I got cut out by the Wi-Fi, but my name is Niall Carden. I'm studying law and business here at Maynooth University, and I'm in my final year.
Brilliant, Niall. So I know that you participated in an Erasmus as part of your Maynooth University experience, which I'm sure there's lots of students sitting there thinking about doing the same. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about your Erasmus experience and why you decided to participate in that as part of your degree?
Yeah, so what I would say firstly is that I went off to Rennes in France, and in order to do this, I had to go off and actually fill out application forms. So if you're interested in doing an Erasmus program, I highly recommend, whether it's Erasmus placement or an international exchange abroad, look into it before Christmas, because after Christmas you're kind of down to, you're cut out with time constraints. So I applied for that as well as a placement at the time. I went for a law placement, which is very competitive here in Maynooth. I didn't actually get the law placement, but luckily enough, I had the Erasmus option. And the Erasmus option, unlike the placement, is optional. So you don't have to take it if you decide last minute you don't want to go. But I went ahead with that anyways. I decided, okay, I'll go to Rennes, France. I actually went through along with a friend of mine who traveled with me. Her name's Julia. We went over to France. Got set up there in Rennes School of Business, a really good business school in the north of France. I hadn't done French since my leaving cert, but I would have a bit of an understanding of it, so that was okay. But there was no language barrier because in the school itself it was all through English, so that was perfectly fine. Now what I would say is, after doing Erasmus, I would highly recommend going for something. Let's say if you learned English, German, French, Spanish, to go for a course like that, because you will need to pick up a language later in life. And even the amount of people I met Mexicans, Colombians, Spanish, French, German, and it just makes you really want to learn a language and learn the different culture, because in the end we're all so similar, but you need to have those key language skills in place.
Brilliant. It sounds like you had a fantastic experience, and not to mention the C word, even amongst all that and the challenges that COVID brought, I'm sure, with that Erasmus experience. So it sounds fantastic. And thanks for bringing us through that process. And I think that's a really important tip in terms of students considering doing Erasmus or placement. What do you think? And I suppose open the floor to what did you do to prepare in applying for those experiences? And maybe, Ellen, if I could come to you first in your kind of SPUR research placement, what tips would you give to a student considering applying to SPUR next year in terms of getting prepared?
Yeah, so it's a very competitive application process, unfortunately, but it does involve a small amount of work. So you basically have to supply your CV, your grades and results from what you've received in college modules, what you received in your Leaving Cert, and then you also have to write a 200-word piece on why you're interested in the project, what makes you a good candidate for the programme, and why you basically want to carry it out. So I'd recommend definitely not to leave it to the very last minute, but you do have plenty of time to apply. They open up in February, and then you have to kind of early March, mid-March to actually hand in your application. So I definitely would think, as soon as the projects are available, really look at them and think about them and see, just to put your best self forward is basically all you can do, and just try and do your best throughout your college life and years to just get the place, basically.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much. And in terms of submitting your application form, was there any particularly experiences or things that you had done throughout your time that really felt helped make your application a success?
See, that's the thing. I didn't have a lot of experience even working in the scientific world. So there wasn't a lot of experience I could kind of really talk about on it or to apply or put myself forward for. So that's why it's such an amazing opportunity, I think, for people to apply and really try their best to get.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Ellen. And you now have that on your CV, which is fantastic going into final year. And Ryan, maybe if I could come to you. So you participated in a number of different work experience opportunities with different organizations. And how do you think you prepared yourself for going into the world of work and completing those internships and placements?
Yeah, I guess they're all a little different. For me, I was thinking, like, from the start of second year, like I went through first year and thinking like my aim was the degree, just to get involved and have a lot of fun. And then I kind of second year over the summer between them, I was thinking I should probably start, just thinking about what I want to do in the future, because in coding, like there's like in programming, there's a difficult application process in terms of usually there's a technical application you have to do as well as the different stages of another interview. And so I just heard a little bit about it and I was a little nervous. So for like kind of from mid-second year, I started just meeting up with a few friends at different times and we'd take different questions we could find from the internet or from books and we kind of just stand in front of a whiteboard and quiz each other and like, okay, I'm your recruiter now. I'm going to rip apart whatever you're going to do here. And we were quite harsh with each other. But it definitely helped because after doing a few weeks of that where we just meet up once a week and do 2 or 3 questions each in an evening, you kind of got very desensitized to having someone watch you try and do out an application process. And so we kind of mix it up and say, okay, well, now we're just going to ask you regular questions. And I felt that was really helpful because then like a recruiter is never, ever going to be as harsh as your friends are when you're doing practice stuff with them. And so I thought that was great because anytime I went to an interview after that or an application process, I was thinking, well, sure, they're going to be far nicer. Like the questions I'm getting here are nothing like what these lads have already thrown at me. So I thought that made me a lot more comfortable just applying for stuff because you kind of like, but before that, I had a little bit of a fear of rejection of applying stuff and thinking, oh, well, if they say no, it just means I'm not good enough. It's not that it was a very competitive process or there's other people that just happen to suit this one better. I had it in my head, it's like, if I don't get this one, it's because I'm crap. And after doing all the practice and talking with the guys and seeing even just that, seeing each other's strengths compared to ourselves, I feel like it got rid of that fear for me because it was a case of, okay, well, I just didn't do well in this process or it just wasn't suited for me. So when I was going into them, it no longer felt like pressure. It was more like I'm doing these as experience for whichever one works out. And because I'd done so many practice ones, it was very much kind of desensitizing yourself to that pressured environment. And I thought that was the best way for me to kind of get involved for application processes. And then kind of going into the work world after that, it feels like a lot less pressure than that process because you're like, well, I'm already in here. I can ask for help off of the person across the table rather than be like, I need to get this right in front of them. So I feel like having that kind of desensitization is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important tool or tip that students can take away from today. We'll see lots of peer interview groups popping up around campus. And when you were in those interviews for those positions, did you feel that recruiters were drawing on different experiences from Maynooth University, or what did you feel benefited you in those interviews?
I think knowing my CV was a big thing because I know a lot of people who do out their CV once and then they just hand it to companies, and I kind of did that at the start. And then like it could have been like 2 or 3 months since you've read your CV when you're going into this interview. And then you're getting a question about some obscure part of it that just happened to pick that interviewer's interest because they might have had something to do with that in their past or whatever. And then it completely catches you off guard. You're like, well, I did that like the one day of that volunteering event. I can't remember what it is. So, but I kind of touched up my CV quite regularly, especially if I knew the company I was applying to, like, well, I would kind of gear it a little bit towards that. So I'd read it before going into everything. So I knew what was going to come up. And because I'd done the practice stuff with my friends, I kind of had an idea of how to talk about each of the things on it. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. And Muse was a really big help with that in having taken the stuff that I'd gotten involved with, reflecting on it and having done out the skills I'd gotten from it, how I'd gotten from it, how I'd gotten involved, because I'd had to have done that before for Muse, so when I was going into interviews, I'd already seen all of that kind of stuff and I knew how to talk about it. So I found that was really, really helpful because then the interviewers are nearly always picking from the same kind of database of questions and stuff that just the standard kind of ones, they're just about different parts of your CV usually, or the job you're going for. So having done all of that before, practice answering those style of questions, I thought that was really helpful for me in the interviews.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thanks so much for that. And I think that tailoring that CV is extremely important from a recruiter's perspective. You know, it's obvious when someone's looked at the job spec and see, and you've tailored it for them. So that's brilliant. Thanks for that tip, Brian. And Sarah, if I could come to you, was there anything when you were applying for your placement that you felt really helped you stand out in the recruitment process?
Yeah, so I do think, as Ryan had kind of said, getting involved in extracurricular activities is a big help. So for me, I'd done some volunteer work. I'd been involved with some clubs and societies, such as the Mental Health Society, was treasurer, things like that. And I remember in my interview, they picked on specific experiences, say like, I was treasurer of the Mental Health society, they're like, oh, tell me about that. So as Ryan said, it is very important to know your CV, because if they can make a connection, whether if they have an interest in mental health or a sport that you've done, they're most likely going to ask you about that. So do kind of know it in detail. But I think it's important to get involved. So whether that's an academic rep, some sporting club you're with, show that on your CV. They're looking to see what you can be involved in. And if you're involved in extracurricular activities, it shows you've got organizational skills and time management. And a lot of companies are looking for that. For example, in auditing, deadlines are crucial, so you need to have time management skills. And by showing I can balance clubs and societies with my grades, that's the skill they're looking for. So you might not think putting down that you're a sports captain of your team is important, but I promise anything like that is extremely important, and it will stand to you. Yes, grades are important, but they're also looking for that extra bit of stuff you're involved in, because if two people have exactly the same grades, what's going to make you stand out? So it's important to have something to make you stand out.
Brilliant. That's really important, Sarah. And I think the fantastic thing about Maynooth is we've so many clubs and SOCs that are active here on campus. I'm always blown away by that in our Maynooth University students. So it's fantastic. Just to remind anyone listening to pop your questions into the live questions chat box and we'll come to them. I know a question came in around the SPUR program. Students were just asking around their eligibility, whether it was open to graduates. So it is just kind of pre-final year students, undergraduate students that are able to apply to the SPUR program. But I suppose, Ellen, if I could come to you and then Niall next, I suppose your SPUR research project, has that given you any new perspectives on your career or where you plan to go next?
Yeah, so research was always something I was interested in, and I'm still interested in. It's such an important part in the scientific world. So I'd always planned to go on and do a PhD in the future. And working with my mentors and also actually sharing the lab with a PhD student, I was able to actually see what it was like to be a PhD student and get an insight into it. So it basically allowed me to confirm that is what I want to do in the future. I will go out and work for a couple of years as advised, and you get more experience that way, especially in data analysis and lab techniques, and then come back and do a PhD in the near future, hopefully.
That's brilliant, and it's fantastic that you found out that, this is something that you want to pursue in the future, and you got that real life experience in doing it, so it's great. And then Niall, if I could come to you in your Erasmus experience, I suppose obviously that year abroad is extremely important, that international experience. Like you mentioned, you'd met people from different cultures and everything like that, but from the experience, do you feel that you gained any new perspectives on your career, or even as you come back and do your final year of studies?
Okay, yeah, well, in Rennes School of Business itself, I have to say it was a very good university. I was getting private school education at the cost of our own university. There were kids there paying 10, 12 grand a year for this university, and I was getting at the price that we pay at home. So in that regard, I learned an awful lot about myself, about what kind of course I wanted. I found that the business course, the business school itself was beyond exceptional. I learned an awful lot about finance. I did marketing in first semester. I found it a bit repetitive due to previous modules I did here in Maynooth. But second semester, I was blown away by the finance courses they had available. And because of that, I went off. I started researching different financial careers. And even I had done SPUR. I had done SPUR over the summer, and I even realized that there were careers in finance to do with research, such as a ratings analyst. I didn't even consider that as a job, but if you're into research but you like the business side of things, that's an option. Also, I had looked into just chief financial analyst positions and different things like that, and the Erasmus position even pushed me to networking. Over the summer, after the Erasmus and with SPUR and everything, I went and I visited different people, just connecting through LinkedIn, through different, I ended up speaking to public bankers, private investment bankers. I went off speaking to lawyers, different positions to figure out what I wanted and what advice they would give. So what I would say is it's kind of a stereotype with the Erasmus experience, but it did change me a lot. Like I like profoundly, like even in the COVID context, I still had the opportunity to go out, learn, and I traveled all of France. So I'm delighted to say that I did it right.
It's great, and that experience living abroad can only stand to you as well. So that's fantastic. A question came in from one of our students. Do you think that Erasmus helps with increasing job prospects and opportunities?
I would say so. And in fact, when I was over there, I had a Spanish roommate, and we came together and we started doing a little venture on our own. So we started a marketing company. And because of that, it wouldn't have been possible if I was just sitting at home or if I was sitting in Minute. It's just the other side about opportunities is you have to realize that you need to take them when they come across. Even if something fails, it doesn't matter. But at the moment, it's early stages, but at the same time, you need to take these opportunities. And for employability of it, 100%, 100%, because the thing is, it shows that you're independent. You went off, you studied abroad, you lived on your own. You're in a completely different culture, and you will learn that very quickly that people operate in so many different ways, and that it's very important that employers see that you have more of not just a national experience, but with the international experience. Like I learned a lot of, let's say the Latin American culture. I learned a lot of the French culture, the German culture, and the different ways that these people work, and the Italians, of course. But I even seeing the way that these people have worked, I found that very interesting, and yeah, it stands out 100%.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. And thanks, Alex, for asking that question. Just you mentioned before you decided to go on Erasmus that you had applied to a law placement. And I suppose some of the theme of the presentations today is kind of around resilience. And I can open this question to all students. You know, there are times where maybe you apply for that opportunity and you don't necessarily get it. And it can be a knock to the confidence. I know, Ryan, your friends probably uh, you drilled it out of you with those mock interviews. But would any of you have any tips for those students that are maybe just feeling lacking in confidence, or just feeling a little bit hard done by if they're applying to opportunities and maybe not hearing back?
I might jump in on that if that's all right. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen people make the mistake of is thinking they need this solid, concrete plan, and it has to go this way, and I need to do this to make sure I'm doing things right, or I need this experience. Whereas it should be a case of you're going in a general direction, you're applying to stuff, and they're a bonus. I feel like a lot of the times you should never be thinking, I really want this job in college. After it's different, but in college, it's not, this is the job that I need to get my experience, to get practice in. It should be a case of, this one will be great. I'll apply for that, hope for the best, do a bit of work for it, but I'm not depending on it, because there's too much variability. There's variability in how you perform on the day, how your application goes, how the recruiter was feeling when they were looking at your application. Like, there's so many things that can happen in a single applications and in single companies. And I think I see I see too many people, I think, depending that this is the one that they're going to go for, where personally, I think it should be a case of you should have an idea. You should have a few that is like, this looks really cool, I'd love to go for that, but not to think everything depends on it. So to have it, it would be great to have that. If it doesn't, it's okay. I'll just keep trying on something else, and not to link your self-worth to the applications you're doing, because realistically, it sounds a bit weird, but they really have nothing to do with you. You do your best, you put your best foot forward and try your best, and then you hope for you hope that everything goes right in terms of the application, in terms of how the recruiter's feeling, how the interview went, kind of the vibe that happened. But there's nothing you can do to control that. So I think it's all about just aiming for opportunities. Great if you get them, not the end of the world if you don't. There's always going to be something else or another way to get something. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ryan. Does anyone else want to add that? Some more questions coming in as well.
Could I just add to that?
Yeah.
I would say straight away that give yourself options. Like, people realize that with the one route, they always go, okay, I want this certain path. But the one thing that I was always told was, give yourself options. Two, apply for 3-4 things. Doesn't matter. Just spread it out a bit. And at least then if one doesn't come back, you might hear from one, you might be unsure about another, but at least you have that option. just always give yourself options 100%. And even it's a two-way street. Like at the end of the day, if the employer doesn't go for you, why are you feeling bad? Like you wouldn't have fit in with the organization. So there's no point in there's no point stressing over it. Now I know 100%. I remember I got that rejection from the law placement back in, I think it was just at the end of February 2020. I was in the gym. I get the email. I look, and I was so depressed, to be honest. I was so frustrated to get that email say, oh, you haven't got it. But the thing is, it worked out for the best. And in saying that, I remember asking the people in my class, okay, so who got it? There were 10 people selected. One person out of the whole place got a position. So that's the thing. You have to realize that it is the luck of the draw, and it is opportunity, but you do really have to realize that, number one, two-way street, and number two, give yourself options, and do not think that it's one set path, because it's not. This is the 21st century. You're going to be changing careers left, right, center, and you have to go in to adapt. So that's all I'll add to that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Niall. I'm conscious of time, but just one or two other questions came in that we might run through. So one student was asking, and I'll open this to the floor, how do you balance your time between extracurricular activities, your school responsibilities, and home or work responsibilities as well?
I might answer this.
Yeah.
So I think the best way is plan as much as you can. So if you know you have lectures like 1 till 3, schedule them in your diary, but also schedule in time for yourself, whether it's going for a walk, going to the gym. I feel like if you write the stuff down and have it there in front of you, you're more likely to stick to it than say, oh, I'll try find like half an hour tomorrow for myself. If you have it wrote down, you know you've made the time for it. So I think write it down, and anything that's important to you, you will be able to balance. You know, it's a great way getting involved in sport or societies to, you know, relieve the stress from college. You know, college can be stressful sometimes, so do make sure you have an outlet. And if you're trying to manage a part-time job, you know, tell your employer what hours you're going to be able to work, or when you've exams coming up. At least then they'll know in advance, and you know, you're giving them a heads up, and they'll appreciate that. So it's just about being open and honest with everyone that you're kind of involved with.
Perfect. That's great, Sarah. I'm afraid I've knocked off the presentations because the questions because the presentation slot finished. So I'm very sorry to any student watching that asked a question. But I know that Niall will be on our Spur stand. And if you want to pop a question, if anyone wants to ask him questions about that, and I know that we have a placement stand as well here, where the placement team are on hand to answer questions about that. But also you can ask questions on social media, and we have some student ambassadors there as well. That time absolutely flew. And I really just want to say a massive thank you to Sarah, Ellen, Ryan and Niall for taking time out your extremely busy schedules in final year, and for sharing your perspectives. And hopefully students listening today have gotten some insight into the different opportunities available to them while they're at Maynooth University, and all the different options available, and some top tips for getting that opportunity and kind of putting your best foot forward as well. So what I'd say to anyone listening in is go visit the company stalls, get chatting to the employers. They're all here today to talk to you, and they really want to hear from you. So make sure you go in, get that information that you need, find out the options available to you, like Niall said, and see what's the right fit for you and what you can do to get future ready. So with that, I'll say goodbye to Sarah, Ryan, Ellen and Niall. Thank you so much. Our next presentation is on LinkedIn, and we'll be joined at 12 from the Washington Ireland programme. So thanks everyone.